Hi, thank you for joining me. My name is Israel Stanway and I'm going to be speaking to you about the Christian Nazarite vow. Can a Christian take the Nazarite vow? I researched this probably for about a year before I made the decision to first do a short-term Nazarite vow. So I'm currently near the end of my first ever Nazarite vow, which is going to be over 3 months. And even though I'd studied and researched and put a lot of prayer and thought into it, it's been a learning curve. It's just been a learning experience, really, this first time. So as you can see, 3 months in, I'm looking like Harry McClary from Donaldson's Dairy. And the reason I wanted to do these videos is because when I was researching can Christians be Nazarites or do the Nazarite vow, I could barely find anything. There was a few videos. I really wanted to know about the nitty-gritty, the rules, the vow itself, who does the vow, why they do the vow, how to get out the vow, and I couldn't find much at all. So I am going to share with you what I have discovered when looking at the scriptures. So I'm going to do 3 videos, I think. The first is looking at the Nazarite vow in the Old Testament. The second is looking at the Nazarite vow in the New Testament. And the third will be, was Jesus himself, Yeshua, was he a Nazarite? And so if you are watching this video, you're probably interested in the Nazarite vow. Because I'd never met a Nazarite vow, I'd never met anyone that was on a Nazarite vow, I found it very difficult to get information. So this is all just from my personal study and research. The Bible and other books, but we're going to, because the Bible is our sole source of authority on all things godly, we're going to look at the Old Testament in this video. So, pens at the ready, notepads ready. I've got my Bible, New King James. I've got my notepad, and I've also got, because it's very important when you're studying the Old Testament to have the Hebrew Tanakh, so that you can get the real original meaning of words and phrases. So, if you've not got one, I'd suggest getting one. Mine is in English and Hebrew, although my Hebrew is very poor. It's still something there that you can study from. So, are we ready? So the Nazarite vow is first mentioned in Numbers 6. And there's a long part dedicated. There's verses 1 to 21 dedicated to the Nazarite vow. So I've labelled up references to the Nazarite vow so that I can get there quickly. And you can see that I've highlighted all that is said on the Nazarite vow in Numbers. So get yourself to Numbers. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and get yourself to chapter 6, and we're going to read the first mention of the Nazarite vow, and this was written by, or certainly spoken by and written down for, Moses. So there's a question there, was Moses the first Nazarite? Possibly. So, the law of the Nazarite. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when either a man or a woman consecrates an offering to take the vow of a Nazarite, to separate himself to the Lord, he shall separate himself from wine and similar drink. So the Hebrew would be strong drink. So that's anything alcoholic is forbidden in the Nazarite vow. He shall drink neither vinegar made from wine, nor vinegar made from similar drink, alcoholic vinegar. Neither shall he drink any grape juice, so that's non-alcoholic grape juice, nor eat fresh grapes or raisins. All the days of his separation shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, from seed to skin. So that's no partaking of grapes whatsoever, which is proven to be very difficult in this modern day and age. All the days of the vow of his separation, no razor shall come upon his head, until the days are fulfilled for which he separated himself to the Lord. He shall be holy. So the hair is the outward symbol of your separation to Yah. Then he shall let the locks of his hair of his head grow. So there's nothing in Numbers that mentions the beard. All the days that he separates himself to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body. So this is the main requirement of the Nazarite vow, is the hair and the wine and the body, the dead bodies. He shall not make himself unclean even for his father or his mother, for his brother or his sister when they die, because his separation to God is on his head. So you're not allowed to touch even your closest family members if they die while you're on your Nazarite vow. All the days of his separation he shall be holy to the Lord. Holy means set apart. And if anyone dies very suddenly beside him, and he defiles his consecrated head, then he shall shave his head on the day of his cleansing. On the 7th day he shall shave it. Then on the 8th day he shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest. This is the part that I think has meant the Nazarite vow has become very unpopular, because it's all about sacrifice. It's very expensive. Once you understand the Nazarite vow, a lot of what you read in the scriptures after that make more sense. Everyone that was anyone that wanted to be holy or set apart themselves to God, who had a strong relationship with God, would partake in the Nazarite vow. And when you read on further, you will realise this once you understand the Nazarite vow. So we get into the sacrifice part. So then in the 8th day you shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest, to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And the priest shall offer one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, and make atonement for him. So you need to understand the sacrificial ceremonies that take place in Leviticus, really, to understand this part. Because he sinned in regards to the corpse, and he shall sanctify his head that same day, he shall consecrate to the Lord the days of his separation, and bring a male lamb in its first year as a trespass offering. But the former days shall be lost, because his separation was defiled. Now this is the law of the Nazarite. When the days of his separation are fulfilled, so this is, you've no longer sinned, this is when your vow is fulfilled. This is how a Jew ends his Nazarite vow, or her Nazarite vow. When the days of his separation are fulfilled, he shall be brought to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and he shall present his offering to the Lord, 1 male lamb in its first year, without blemish, as a burnt offering, 1 ewe lamb in its first year without blemish as a sin offering, 1 ram without blemish as a peace offering. Another word for that peace offering, depending on what translation you read, is fellowship offering, friendship. A basket of unleavened bread, cakes of fine flour mixed with oil, unleavened wafers, anointed with oil, and their grain offering with their drink offerings. Then the priest shall bring them before the Lord and offer his sin offering and his burnt offering, and he shall offer the ram as a sacrifice of peace offering to the Lord. With the basket of unleavened bread, the priest shall also offer its grain offering and its drink offering. Then the Nazarite shall shave his consecrated head at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and shall take the hair from his consecrated head and put it on the fire, which is under the sacrifice of the place of offering. So they have to burn the hair. The fire really signifies scent going up to the Lord. So I can't remember exactly where it is, but it says about our prayers going up as incense to the Lord. It's like a smell that goes up to the Lord. When the animals were sacrificed and burnt, the aroma would go up to the Lord. And so the hair, the holiness of the hair, the sanctification, the outward appearance of your atonement, your separation to God is cut off and is put on the fire to be an aroma to the Lord. And the priest shall take the... where are we gone? Oh no, I'm lost. Then the Nazarite shall shave his head, blah, blah, blah. There we go. Sacrifice, peace. Consecrated, put on the fire, which is under the sacrifice of the peace offering. And the priest shall take the boiled shoulder of the ram, 1 unleavened cake from the basket, and 1 unleavened wafer, and put them upon the hands of the Nazarite after he has shaved his consecrated hair, and the priest shall wave them as a wave offering. Saying about aroma to the Lord, you had wave offerings, which was again an aroma thing. They are holy for the priest, together with the beast of the wave offering and the thigh of the heave offering. After that, the Nazarite may drink wine. This is the law of the Nazarite vow to the Lord, the offering for his separation, and besides that, whatever else his hand is able to provide. So this is extra gifts on top, according to the vow which he takes, so he must do according to the law of his separation. Wow, there's a lot in that. I'm not expecting you to take all that in straight away. As a Christian, how do we do that? How do we fulfill these sacrificial laws? And I wrestled with this, I struggled with this, because now if a Jew takes a Nazarite vow, because there's no temple or no tabernacle, the Jew is stuck in his Nazarite vow for life. But as a Christian, Jesus, the Messiah, the Amashiach, he is our sacrifice. He spoke about himself as the Passover lamb, so he is our lamb offering. He spoke about himself as our peace offering, our fellowship offering. So when Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac, and the angel of the Lord stopped him, and he offered Abraham to sacrifice a ram that was caught by its horns, by its head in the thorns. And God told the angel to give this to Abraham that he may sacrifice the ram instead. That was a peace offering that God was actually offering to Abraham. and for Abraham to offer it to the Lord. So then Jesus refers to himself as that peace offering, that ram offering, and he also had his head wrapped in thorns as he was sacrificed. So as a Christian, the Nazarite vow becomes so much easier because Jesus is all of our offerings. He is our sin offering, he is our fellowship offering, he is everything that the sacrificial system used to be. He is that for us. We should still offer what we can. So I've made the decision that at the end of my vow, when my hair goes, I will burn it as a scented offering to the Lord. And on top of all these sacrifices, you get the option to give. So because Christ is all my sacrifices, I am choosing to give something that's expensive to the local food bank. Often when things are given to the food bank, it's cheap. So I've decided on baby milk, because baby milk's quite expensive. Never do you see it given to the food bank, but there are so many families that are in poverty that struggle to buy milk for their children. So that is what I feel is laid on my heart to give. So that is my giving on top of the sacrifices for the end of my vow. But that's a personal thing. The thing about the Nazarite vow is it's not essential, it's not a law, it's not a commandment. You read right at the start there, it's anyone who wants to consecrate themselves to God. And then you start to wonder, right, who were the Old Testament prophets, Nazarites? Who were the Nazarites? Who made this Nazarite vow? And actually, anytime a vow is mentioned in the Old Testament, it is more than likely the Nazarite vow, because there is no other separation vow mentioned in the Old Testament. The Nazarite vow is the vow. It is the vow. So in the New Testament, we'll do a little bit of a jump. I shouldn't talk about this because I'm going to do a video on the New Testament. But in the New Testament, when Jesus gives the parable about the Good Samaritan, he gives an example of a Pharisee and a Sadducee walking past a man who had been beaten up, and they walked to the other side of the road to pass him by. But the Samaritans were a less holy people, and the Samaritan would not have been on a Nazarite vow, but the priests more than likely were most of the time, but the Sadducees and Pharisees, to be seen as holy, would have gone on Nazarite vows. So they would have been worried to help the injured man in case he died. And they would be defiled. They would have to give all these sacrifices. It would cost them an awful lot of money. They would have to shave their heads, which would be a bit shameful, and they would have to start their Nazarite vow again. So they took the vow to the point of not helping someone in need, whereas Jesus frowned upon that, and he praised the Samaritan who was not on the vow, but he risked being defiled to help this man. So there's so many things, wait to see it, there's so many things in the Bible that make sense when you understand the Nazarite vow. So, number 6 is all about the Nazarite vow. Then we're going to go to the next mention of it, which is in the book of Judges 13. Judges 13, and we're talking here about the birth of Samson, possibly the most famous Nazarite. As we know, Samson had very long hair, and this is when the angel appears to Samson's parents probably even the angel Phanuel, which means face of God. And so the angel appears to Samson's mother, announcing that she will fall pregnant. And here is what he says to her. The angel says, "Now, therefore, please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink, and do not eat anything unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines." So, Samson's mother had to take the Nazarite vow because the child in her stomach was to be a Nazarite from the womb. That says an awful lot about the importance of preborn children. So the mother carrying the unborn child had a responsibility not to drink wine, and it says here not to eat unclean meat. Now, not eating unclean meat isn't mentioned in the Numbers 6 account of the Nazarite vow, and that is because in Numbers they are presuming that you're sticking to the Levitical law and that you're not eating unclean meat anyway. But as with all Old Testament laws, some have great consequences and others have little or no consequence. So every law, every commandment either comes with a consequence or a promise generally, but the lesser important laws come with little or no consequence. And so eating unclean meat comes with little or no consequence. We can presume that in this time, in the book of Judges, not everyone was sticking to the laws of eating unclean meat. So the angel reminds Samson's mother that she is not to eat any unclean meat. And this is quite important. We'll look at this point from a Christian Nazarite vow in the New Testament. Whereas most Christians today eat pork and prawns, squid, octopus, crab, shrimp. We tend to use Peter's vision, where in Acts 10, where God shows Peter a vision and he says, "Don't call anything unholy that I have created." But if you read in Acts 10, read the whole chapter, it's clearly talking about, what was his name? The Roman centurion. Anyway, there's a Roman centurion, we're going to look at it, and it was talking about him. God commanded Peter to go to his house and say, "Don't call anything unclean which I've created." He was talking about a man, not food. So, Samson's mother commanded no wine and no unclean meat. Are you ready for the next one? So we're going to go to 1 Samuel 1. So 1 Samuel 1, 11 to 16. And this here is when Samuel's mother, who struggled to conceive, his mother was Hannah, his father had another wife, and the other wife had lots of children, and Hannah couldn't conceive. So Samuel's father would try and show her love by trying to feed her. He was a bit of a feeder. He'd try and give her food all the time, and she would refuse, and she was grief-stricken. She went to the temple, not the temple, it was the pre-temple temple at Shiloh. But anyway, it was the house of the Lord, and Eli saw her weeping. And so, as she was weeping and crying out to the Lord, this is what she said. Then she made a vow, the vow. She became a Nazarite and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant and remember me. So remember, the mother of Samson became a Nazarite and conceived. The mother of Samuel became a Nazarite and conceived. Your maidservant, and remember me, and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child. Then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head. So Samuel was a Nazarite from the womb, the same way that Samson was a Nazarite from the womb. Samuel was the first, I'd say probably the first prophet from the time of Moses even. We had lots of judges in between Moses and Samuel, but these judges were the rulers of Israel. But now when Samuel came along, Samuel was a priest and a prophet, and he was ruler of Israel until he appointed a king, King Saul, and then in Saul's failure, King David. But Samuel was born a Nazarite. Fab. So then we're going to go to Ezekiel. Big jump. Now, there's probably more references in here. These are just the ones that I've come across. So, again, a big section on Ezekiel being a Nazarite. Hints of Ezekiel being a Nazarite. It doesn't out and out say that he is a Nazarite. But Ezekiel was priest at the time when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came and conquered Israel. What's also interesting is that Ezekiel was priest at the same time that Jeremiah was prophet. So Ezekiel and Jeremiah would have known each other, and they were both, as you can, if you read Jeremiah, and then Jeremiah wrote the book of Lamentations, read Lamentations, then Ezekiel was priest at that time, and it's all along the same lines. It's all about God's judgment on the Israelites that is coming. So Ezekiel was a priest and a prophet at the same time that Jeremiah was prophet. So here we go. This is a symbol. This is in Ezekiel 5. What God is asking Ezekiel to do is to end his Nazarite vow as a symbol of God's covenant ending for that time with Israel. So the Nazarite vow is a self-made covenant with God. And what God is commanding Ezekiel to do at this time is to end his self-made covenant as a symbol that God is ending his self-made covenant. It's like starting afresh, cutting the hair. This vow, this relationship is currently over for this foreseeable future. That doesn't mean you can't start the Nazarite vow again. It means you've been defiled you need to start again. And that is what God is getting Ezekiel to do through this symbolic action that we're about to read. And you, son of man, take a sharp sword, take it as a barber's razor, and pass it over your head and your beard. This is the first mention of beards relating to the Nazarite vow. Then take scales to weigh and divide the hair. You shall burn with fire 1/3 in the midst of the city. So you remember the end of the Nazarite vow. Burning the hair is symbolic, reference to the Lord. You can almost say that 1/3 of Israel will survive what's about to come. 1/3 is wholly consecrated to the Lord. In the midst of the city, when the days of the siege are finished, then you shall take 1/3 and strike around it with the sword, and 1/3 you shall scatter to the wind. So this is symbolic, saying that 1/3 of Israel will be consecrated to the Lord, 1/3 will be struck with the sword, killed, and 1/3 will be scattered to the wind, scattered to the nations. I will draw out a sword after them. You shall also take a small number of them and bind them in the edge of your garment. So he's got to sew in some of his own consecrated Nazarite hairs into his garment. Then take some of them again and throw into the midst of the fire and burn them in the fire. From there a fire will go out into all the houses of Israel. So that's 2 fires, one burnt in the midst of the city, Jerusalem, and one out into the midst of the people of Israel. Thus says the Lord God, this is Jerusalem. I have set her in the midst of the nations and the countries all around her. She has rebelled against my judgments by doing wickedness more than the nations, and against my statutes more than the countries that are all around her. For they have refused my judgments, and they have not walked in my statutes. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, because you have multiplied disobedience more than the nations that are all around you, have not walked in my statutes, nor kept my judgments, nor even done according to the judgments of the nations that are all around you. Therefore, thus says the Lord, I indeed, even I am against you, and will execute judgment in your midst in the sight of the nations. So it's fair to say that Ezekiel was on a Nazarite vow, and he was given an extraordinary commandment what to do with his hair at the end of his vow. He was commanded to end his vow. It was like a symbol of being defiled. So when a Nazarite is defiled, they have to shave their head and start again. And this is what's happening here in the book of Ezekiel. Now, because Ezekiel was a Nazarite, we can almost presume that the other man separated to God at the time, Jeremiah, was probably also a Nazarite, because it's this personal choice to separate yourself, to consecrate yourself to God and to be holy. Now, another man, another extraordinary, one of the major prophets, you have major prophets and minor prophets. There was a third major prophet alive this day, this very day, which I find mind-blowing. It's wonderful that 3 of the Old Testament major prophets were alive at the same time. And the third major prophet of the trio is Daniel. And if we go to Daniel 1, verse 8. So Daniel was a member of the royal household. Ezekiel would have been a Levite. I'm pretty sure it says what tribe Jeremiah was from, but I can't remember. But Daniel was from the tribe of Judah. And he was taken into captivity, into Babylon, because he was royal, because he was good looking, and because he was well educated. And he was going to be put in the king's council. He was to become a, what were they called? The Nagai, I think it was the Nagai. So he was to become a Nagai, a holy man, a priest of Nebuchadnezzar. But he wanted to remain holy to God. And so it says here in Daniel 1:8, because Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were given their Babylonian names. But Daniel wanted to remain holy to Yah. He wanted to be consecrated to God. And he would have seen the priest in Jerusalem, Ezekiel, regularly, if he was a Torah-obeying Jew, which he was. He was a law-abiding Jew. He wasn't Israelite, but specifically a Jew, specifically from the tribe of Judah. He was law-abiding. He would have seen regularly Ezekiel, the priest. And he would have, I imagine him in my head as this young man, late teens, early 20s, sitting there in one of the palace windows, listening to this prophet out shouting in the streets, Jeremiah, shouting, warning of the coming judgment of God. And then he would have been taking his sacrifices to the house of God, and he would have been meeting Ezekiel. And this young man of royal lineage, decides in 1 verse 8, but Daniel purposed himself in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portions of the king's delicacies. We look at the word delicacies in the Hebrew, and it's meats. He would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meats, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into the favour and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king. We know the story. They tested Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego for 10 days on water and vegetables, and they looked healthier than the other men that had been selected for the king's service. So God was honouring Daniel's decision, and I love that because I looked it up in the Hebrew and it still says purposed. He purposed himself not to be defiled. And that is exactly what the Nazarite vow is all about. It's about purposing yourself to be holy, to be consecrated to God. And it doesn't say if Daniel grew his hair, but knowing the background, knowing that he would have met Ezekiel, a Nazarite, he would have seen Ezekiel's example. Ezekiel would have had a huge influence on Jeremiah, who was zealous for the Lord and out shouting in the streets, the prophet of gloom and doom. Ezekiel's influence, because the priest at the time was very, very, very influential. And so this influential Nazarite has been in contact with Jeremiah and in contact with Daniel, and Daniel makes the decision, he purposes himself to be separate to God. One last mention of Nazarites. This is actually a mention. It's not just a hint to, like a lot of our things we've been looking at here, like Ezekiel and Daniel. This is a mention, and it is in Amos. Amos is a minor prophet. But we can presume that Amos, even though he was a minor prophet, not a major prophet, was also a Nazarite, and he is speaking against the Israelites. And he says, I raised up, he's speaking on God's behalf to the Israelites, I raised up some of your sons as prophets, and some of your young men as Nazarites. It is not so, O you children of Israel. Is it not so, O you children of Israel, says the Lord? But you gave the Nazarites wine to drink, and commanded the prophets to, saying, do not prophesy. So it's saying about these holy men that were consecrated to God, separate to God, and Israel didn't want them, giving the Nazarites wine, commanding the prophets not to prophesy. So the Nazarite and the prophet are very closely linked. They're very closely linked. You can see Ezekiel probably was a Nazarite. It's possible, because Moses came up with the vow, that Moses was a Nazarite. Daniel, we think, took the Nazarite vow. Amos took the Nazarite vow. I can't wait to talk about New Testament Nazarites in the next video. But from the Old Testament conclusion, what I came to, the conclusion, the rules of being a Nazarite in this modern world, is a Christian Nazarite, that is, in this modern world, is no alcohol whatsoever. So I have decided, over the Christmas period, I deliberately chose Christmas because Christmas in the West, it's a time of eating and drinking and celebrating. So I've chose over the Christmas period to do this 3-month Nazarite vow, leading up to Christmas, during Christmas and after Christmas, and into the new year. And then at the new year, I'll end my Nazarite vow. So no alcohol whatsoever. So I've had no alcohol for at least 3 months now, which isn't a big deal for me because I don't really like it anyway. Nothing of the vine whatsoever. Now this has been very tricky for me. It's been difficult because it's just shocking how much grapes are in stuff. So I've found it really difficult. It's no mince pies, no Christmas pudding, nothing. You have to check sweets, you have to check cakes. I made a mistake. I ate some carrot cake because I thought raisins aren't going to be in carrot cake, but yes, there was raisins in carrot cake. So nothing with grapes whatsoever. No dead bodies, which is a fairly easy one for most of us in this day and age. I used to work in an undertaker's where I touched dead bodies all the time. I could never have done the Nazarite vow then, but it's easy for me now because I have no contact whatsoever with any dead bodies. The other part is no unclean meats. Now, even as a Christian, I'd say this is important, and I'm going to go into the reason why. why the unclean meats is important. I'll look at that with you in the New Testament. But I, as a Christian Nazarite, I made the decision not to eat any unclean meats. So over Christmas, this means no sausages, no bacon, no pigs in blankets, no prawns, no squid or octopus or crab. I accidentally ate a crab sandwich, which was a bit annoying. It gave me food poisoning anyway, so it serves me right. And but when you're not eating unclean meats, that also means jelly or jelly sweeties, because they come from pig gelatin. Meat sacrificed to other gods. In our modern culture, here in the UK, almost all supermarket meats are halal. So I've not been able to eat anything that would be halal. As a Christian anyway, you probably shouldn't be, and we'll go into that in the New Testament. But I've decided to, over this 3 months, to eat almost a purely vegetarian diet, just to make it easier. There's a few situations where I've had the opportunity to eat meat and I have asked, is this halal? And if the answer has been no, it's locally sourced and killed in our local slaughterhouse, and it's beef or it's lamb, then I have eaten it. But I have not eaten any supermarket meat whatsoever. Anything with beef gelatin, anything with pig gelatin, anything that's in the Levitical list of unclean meats, I've chosen not to eat. Which is difficult this day and age. It's not straightforward what has meat in it and what doesn't have meat in it. Because everything that we eat now has so many ingredients compared to when these laws were written. There wasn't so many ingredients in what they ate then. Nothing unclean, nothing wine or alcohol related. I even questioned mouthwash. Do I rinse my mouth out with mouthwash because it's got alcohol in it? And I've decided it's important to look after your teeth. So I've decided that I would rinse my mouth out with mouthwash, even though it had alcohol in it, because I'm not drinking it. I wondered about my beard, and I felt God specifically say, take it as it is. Does it mention in number 6 about the beard? So I've let my beard grow a little longer than I would usually, but I have decided to trim it so that I don't look completely homeless. Some Jews that take the Nazarite vow, or Rastafarians that take the Nazarite vow, often what they do is they don't even wash their hair or brush their hair in case that removes hairs, which I have decided, and I felt compelled to, keep my beard reasonably trim, let it grow a bit longer, but keep it reasonably trim, and wash my hair and brush my hair regularly so that I don't look scruffy. I want to look as presentable as possible while I'm on this Nazarite vow. We're told in the New Testament when we're fasting not to make yourself look like you're fasting. It's not a show. You're not doing this for attention. You're doing this to separate and consecrate yourself to God. So I felt this is very similar to fasting, because I'm fasting lots of things. I will not make myself look unpresentable. I will try and maintain a presentable look and appearance while I'm on this Nazarite vow. So there you go. That is Old Testament Nazarites. And my personal reason for doing the Nazarite vow is because I absolutely love the Lord. I love Yah. I want wholeheartedly to be consecrated to Him and to be dedicated to Him, to be dedicated to God. And I'm at a very important stage in my life where something new is happening, something big is happening in my life. And I've decided that 3 months leading up to that would be a very important time to do the Nazarite vow. Jesus is my sacrifices. He is my everything. He is every sacrifice that the Old Testament requires fulfilled in one man. And so he is holy and sinless and blameless. He is, as the prophet Isaiah said, Emmanuel, God with us. And he is more than enough to be all of my sacrifices. But I have chosen to give to the poor a little extra as required on the end of that chapter 6 there in Numbers. And so there you go. I hope this has helped. It's very intense, nearly an hour long. But if you're seriously interested in doing the Nazarite vow as a Christian, you've probably watched it, because I watched absolutely everything I could find on YouTube about Nazarite vows, which wasn't a lot. So I'm hoping now there will be something more on YouTube for people seeking to do the Nazarite vow as Christians to watch. God bless you, and all the best in your research into the Nazarite vow and deciding if it's the right thing for you to do as a mature, God-fearing Christian. So God bless. See you in the next video.